My name is Amanda Charles. I am the Climate Smart Agriculture Community Education Specialist. I represent Sonoma, Marin, and Mendocino counties. So anybody that fits within that, I am your gal for anything healthy soils or sweep related. So let's get started. So just an overview, I'm gonna talk a little bit about what my role is with the programs and what services I provide as a community education specialist. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about how these programs relate to your guys' operations and IPM based systems within your operations. So a little deep dive into each of the programs, what their application process looks like, what projects look like in our area, and then a little bit about solicitation changes that CDFA has released for both of these programs. And I hope to have some time for questions at the end. If you guys do have questions that arise, please go ahead and throw them in the Q&A. And I will try to answer them the best I can at the end. Okay, so a little bit about who I am and how I relate to these programs. I am one in a team of 9. So there are 9 of us throughout the state that represent different regions. So if your county is not highlighted in the color here, you can find the closest community education specialist on here. But what we do is provide technical assistance for the 3 CDFA Climate Smart Agriculture grants. So today, like I said, we're talking about healthy soils and sweep. So what we do is we provide hands-on application assistance, project design and implementation assistance, as well as project verification assistance and translation services and computer access. So what does all this mean is typically this looks like a phone call or a site visit with the grower to kind of go over what your idea is for a project, what your goals are with this project, and how to submit a successful application. And then hopefully once you are awarded, we are able to help with any questions you might have after that. So when Healthy Soils and Sweep are live, myself and my colleagues are pretty involved with the CDFA team. So we can answer most questions and then even come out and help with soil sampling, anything with project implementation and verification from then on. So starting with Healthy Soils, the Healthy Soils program is put on by the California Department of Food and Agriculture as a program to incentivize California growers to implement new practices that have not been implemented in the past that sequester carbon, reduce greenhouse gases, and also improve your soil health. So this program started in 2017, and they've seen it have 2 different solicitation types. One is merit-based, but most common with Healthy Soils is first come, first serve basis. So what this looks like is you submit an application, and in the order your application was submitted, CDFA is going to go through and review those applications. Often these applications do get sent back. They do tell you why it's sent back, and then you could resubmit and you're kicked to the end of the line. But like I said, all in the order of how they are received. These applications have a budget cap of up to $100,000 to implement these new practices. With a 3-year grant term. So from the start date of your project, which could be up to a year after you apply, to 3 years from that start date is the length of the grant term. And this Healthy Soils grant is done on a reimbursement basis. So once you complete your practices and you submit your verification to CDFA and you are approved, sent through for verification, CDFA will cut a check for whatever budget is allotted in each year of the program. So there have been a multitude of vineyard projects funded I chose to do the Sonoma County area in the 2021 round. Here's a list of the most common practices done, but I would say the most common are definitely the top 4: hedgerows, cover cropping, mulching with wood chips, and compost application. This is not a fully extensive list of all practices offered for orchards and vineyards, but it is, like I said, probably the most common ones. Okay, so what is composting? Composting is not just a product, but a process. So the composting process essentially is a process that takes raw materials through a heating process of microbial activity to produce a finished product. So Putting these raw materials through that composting process ensures that all weed seeds, pathogens, any pests like mealybugs are killed off. So we all know that producing berries on the vine takes up a lot of nutrients out of the soil. So putting compost back into the soil is a way to put these micro and macronutrients back into the soil by recycling our on-vine waste products. So if you are killing off any pests that are in your compost, there is a reduced need for pesticide application, and you're not going to see pests spread from anything that came off your vines. I have included a little picture here of a nice little pumice pile going through the composting process. As well, on the left-hand side, I included what CDFA requires for on-farm produced compost. So it lays out what system you're using, whether that be a static aerated pile or a windrowing pile, what temperatures need to be maintained for how long, and what your C/N ratios verification process will look like. So benefits of compost, like I said, are going to provide nutrients back into your soil for plant growth, increase organic matter in your soil, improve soil structure, which in turn is increasing your water holding capacity and reducing soil erosion on farm as well. So compost is typically spread in the rows, right? You're trying to get it under the vines, like you see here, neatly put under the vines. And application rates for this program purpose vary dependent on your C/N ratios. So it could be 2 to 4 tons per acre, as well as 6 to 8 tons per acre. Hedgerows can help to reduce erosion and dust within the vineyard and can help in sustaining beneficial insects throughout the year. So when designing a hedgerow, if you are strategic in planning what times your hedgerows will flower, you can do your best to sustain beneficial insects year round. And you can also be sure to throw in some drought tolerant plants. So CDFA is going to require that you maintain these for at least the 3 years of your grant duration, right? So for the first 2 years, you may have to water them to establish them, and then in years after, not so much. Cover crops. So cover crops come in all different varieties and mixes depending on what management goals you want to achieve. So some cover crop varieties are significant to weed suppression or pest prevention, and some to nitrogen uptake. But cover crops can, as well as hedgerows, supply pollen and nectar to beneficial parasitoids and insects in a vineyard. So by working to create a habitat for these beneficial insects, pest pressure can be reduced and pest populations are suppressed, in turn decreasing your need for pesticides. Some common cover crops that can assist in management decisions consist of clovers, which can flower and be pollinator friendly, legumes used for nitrogen fixation, white mustard can be used to prevent nematodes from spreading. I'm assuming most of you are most familiar with maybe the plow down mix, which can be used for nitrogen fixation, increasing your organic matter, as well as weed suppression and erosion control. An example of one of the growers that me and my colleagues worked with was out of the Fresno area. He's been experimenting with cover crops a lot in the past couple of years, and he's kind of found out what species and system works for him. Excuse me. And he said he has not seen a pest outbreak in the past couple of years because he's kind of perfected cover crops for him in his system. So the application process for healthy soils has 4 parts to it. I'm going to start with the first 2 parts. So the first part, you're just implementing what acreage you're working on, what APNs are included in this, management history. So if you have been doing practices, what practices have you tried, as well as submitting a work plan. And what a work plan looks like is like a 3-year calendar of what year and what time you plan to implement which practices. And some of these practices are a 1-year practice. So hedgerows, you're going to put that hedgerow in the first year and monitor it in the next 2, whereas compost is a 3-year practice. You're going to apply compost every year for 3 years. Project design. So this is probably the biggest piece of the 4. So I have laid out a little project here. You can see it on the left. Excuse me. This vineyard in particular chose to do compost, cover crops, and mulching. So you can see the acreage for each of those pieces, as well as where it's located. In the middle, it just has a little draw of the shape of your field. So within those parameters is where you're going to implement these practices. And then all the way on the right, there is a piece in the replan tool that identifies if your project is located in a priority population or if it is not. And then you are going to list with certain practices like cover crops. I listed all the species that will be included in those cover crops. The last 2 pieces of the application process. The third is going to be the comment planner, which is what I have a screen grab of here. So in the comment planner, you will input which practices you're doing and how many acres for each practice, and the comment planner will spit you out the budget. So your budget is created based on your greenhouse gas reductions quantified by this comment planner. So this budget does not include the cost of soil samples, but CDFA does reimburse you for that cost at $50 per sample per year. And then the fourth and final piece of this application is just personal information, your farm size, your tax ID number or social security number, if you identify as a socially disadvantaged farmer and rancher, and if you are located in an AB 1550 priority population. Post-award activities. So Healthy Soils does not have any post-project awarding consultations, but they will just kind of send you your grant agreement. You look over your grant agreement, make sure everything looks good. You don't want to do any changes, signed it and send it off. And then they give you your project start date. So once you're given your project start date, your first step is going to be taking your soil samples and submitting those, and then implementing your practices. So implementing your practices, you want to be very sure you know what your verification looks like for that specific practice. For example, this could look like geotagged photos. This can look like receipts and invoices from compost you purchased, or this could look like farm logs saying you seeded your cover crop at this rate on this day. On the left, I have requirements. I just took a little screen grab of what's required for composting. So what rate you're putting it on at, what pictures you're taking, receipts, analysis of your C to N ratio, and if you got that from a verified composting facility. And then on the right, I included what a little geotag photo looks like. So for compost, you have to take pictures of your piles before your compost is spread. And that's what that looks like. And then I put together a list of what I think to be my most frequently asked questions for the Healthy Soils program. So who is eligible? California farmers and ranchers and federally recognized Native American Indian tribes. So this does not include universities or community gardens. But as long as you are an operating California farm, you are eligible. Is cost sharing required? Cost sharing is not required, but it is always encouraged. And can funds be combined with NRCS's EQIP? Yes, they can. It gets a little tricky. They can't fund exactly the same pieces, but you can use them to make a grander scheme project. Can I apply for multiple projects? So awards are limited to 1 per ag operation, per unique tax ID or social security number. So it's kind of dependent on the tax ID is the significance there. Do I have to own the property to apply? No, you do not have to own the property to apply. But if you do not own the property, CDFA is going to require that you submit kind of a written agreement between you and the landowner, just saying that I am the landowner. I acknowledge that this is a 3-year grant. I understand that these practices will be implemented for these 3 years, and I am given it the okay. And then signed, sealed, delivered, submitted. Websites and resources for Healthy Soils. I highly, highly recommend, if you are interested in signing up for Healthy Soils, do sign up for these email subscriptions. So this is on the CDFA website. You can sign up to get notifications. So you will know when solicitation is going to open up for that, and anything from there on out. It's a good way to stay in the loop on that. Other resources for Healthy Soils on the left, I took a little screen grab of that one. I do use the soil sampling protocol. I refer back to that when I do maybe forget little pieces and need to know what I'm doing specifically, as well as instructions on how to take geotagged photos. A lot of people haven't done that before, so there's a pretty good list of instructions on how to do that. Okay, moving on to SWEEP, the State Water Efficiency and Enhancement Program. As most of you are already using drip irrigation systems in your operations, you are probably already efficiently minimizing your water usage to reduce pests on farm and to reduce your water usage as well. But the SWEEP program is an available funding opportunity to make your system even more efficient and kind of take it that one next step. So the SWEEP program is also administered by CDFA and provides financial incentive to California farmers and ranchers to implement irrigation systems that reduce greenhouse gases and also save water on the farm. So you have to comply with both of those to be eligible to apply for SWEEP. The SWEEP program started in 2014, and we have seen the SWEEP program be released on a merit base and a first come, first serve. So most recently, it has been on first come, first serve, as the Healthy Soils has, which is just kind of, if you check all the boxes and apply, you have an eligible project, whereas merit-based, it's kind of more points-based and it's got to be a little bit more strategic. So we have heard that they may do merit-based for the next application period, but we don't know yet. So that'll be known once the RGA is released. So we are expecting an application window for both of these programs, maybe early 2023. I would say not any earlier than the first of the year. The max award amount for the SWEEP program is $200,000, so you're capped at that budget. And the grant duration for this is 2 years as opposed to 3. That it is in Healthy Soils. Just some rules of the road for SWEEP is an ag operation cannot receive cumulative SWEEP funds greater than $600,000. So you can't have 3 full applications for one ag operation funded by SWEEP. And if you have SWEEP funded on APN in the past, you cannot have a new SWEEP grant on that same APN. It's got to be a different APN if going into the same ag operation. Eligible system components. So around here, that looks like soil, weather, and plant sensors, drip system components, pump retrofits and replacements, fuel conversion from diesel to electric, VFDs, installation of renewable energy, solar. But what is not eligible is new and deeper wells, the addition of any new pumps, and newly planted acreage. So if you just have some newly planted acreage that hasn't even been irrigated yet and you think you're going to get a whole new irrigation system out of this, that's not how SWEEP works. So it's got to be operated in the past and moving forward. Allowable costs, obviously components of irrigation systems is allowable costs, but as well as hardware and telemetry, software for any of these sensors, flow meters are required. So if you do not already have a flow meter, that is an allowable cost. Permits and fees for electric connection and subscription services within that project term. So if you do have to get a subscription service, they will fund the first 2 years of that subscription service. There have not been an incredible amount of SWEEP projects funded in the area. So I reached out to a couple of the growers that were funded just to see what they look like specifically. So in the first 2 locations, they are relatively similar, just replacement of drip line and emitters in these smaller based acreage, as well as installation of soil moisture probes and an inline pressure gauge in the first one. And in the second, installation and subscription of 2 Thule ET sensors. And the third one looked a little different. It was fuel conversion and switching to a lower horsepower pump, as well as soil moisture monitoring systems. So pre-application preparation, if you are interested in applying for SWEEP, there are 3 things that we suggest you do now, yesterday, get on it, is collecting energy records for the past 12 months. So energy records can look like PG&E bills, they can look like fuel logs, just any records of your energy usage for the consecutive past 12 months prior to the application period opening, as well as pump efficiency tests. So they say that your pump test is valid for up to 24 months prior to application. So say you got a pump test taken this year and the application period opens next year, should still be valid. The third thing we suggest you do, bids are not required unless you are doing some solar aspects to this. They're required for solar, but not for general projects. But we do suggest that you collect bids from vendors just so you can piece together your project, because it's kind of difficult to do that without knowing how much everything's going to cost. The SWEEP application is a bit more extensive than the healthy soils. You're going to have a project narrative, which is laying out what your current system looks like, what it's going to look like, and what crops you have. Project design is pretty simple. It's just a little map. Budget worksheet is going to be an Excel spreadsheet laid out of your allowable costs, and then you will complete your water savings tool and your greenhouse gas calculator tool, which are multiple tabbed Excel spreadsheets. They get a little bit more complicated. So project design, really simple. I just took a little screen grab of a Google map, and through PowerPoint, I threw on some little dots, some arrows, just labeling where things are in the project, as well as the IPM and what the crop is and what the acreage is. Your budget worksheet is where you're going to itemize your allowable costs, split into supplies and equipment, other, and labor. So this is where you're going to throw in your bids from vendors in here. And if you don't have them, they do recommend that you use the EQIP payment schedule as a guide. So post-award activities. Yes, you will be required to have a flow meter. Like I said, if you don't already have one, you will need to implement one so you can allot for that in your allowable costs. Once you are awarded, they will have a pre-project consultation, which typically looks like one of the SWEEP members from CDFA giving you a phone call saying, hey, you were awarded, here's what your project looks like. Is there anything you want to change? Is there anything you don't understand? Just kind of solidifying that moving forward. Post-project verification. So this could be similar to healthy soils, where you submit geotagged photos, or you could have a little phone call or a Zoom. Sometimes you're out there with your laptop just showing them like, hey, here's the pump, or here's the soil moisture probes. There is also a possibility of post-project quantification, or the first 3 years of your project. CDFA can come out and just kind of make sure that your project is still viable. If you are saving water, if you are reducing your greenhouse gas emissions, it's not regulatory by any means. It's just them checking in for their data collection in the same way they do healthy soils, soil samples, like to see if your organic matter is increasing. And they do expect you to maintain these systems for a minimum of 10 years. So they don't want you putting in these new systems and then retiring a couple years later, or ripping out that crop entirely and switching to something else. Like, they want these to stay there and they want them to last. I stole some FAQs off the CDFA website for SWEEP because I think it's a really great resource. They are up there. If you guys are thinking about applying, I highly, highly recommend you read through these. I picked just a couple of them. So, is there a minimum amount required for match funding? Same as healthy soils. No, it's not required, but it is encouraged. I would say with SWEEP a lot more than healthy soils, people are using match funding, either their own costs that they're going to incur or some sort of EQIP. So rolling into EQIP, you can match EQIP with these projects. It just can't be funding the same components for that project. So you can build a project with them both, but you cannot you can't double dip, basically. Is a pump test required even if changes to the pump are not a part of the project? Yes, pump tests are still required, including booster pumps, because that's how you're going to fill out a good portion of your application. And is there a minimum threshold for water savings and greenhouse gas reduction? No, but it's gonna depend if it's that merit-based system or if it's the first come first serve system. If it's first come first serve, if you check the boxes like yes you're saving water and yes you're reducing greenhouse gases, then you're good there. If it's the merit-based system, you're going to want to make sure you're getting the maximum amount of points for that. Website and resources, like I said, they have the budget worksheet, water savings calculator, and greenhouse gas calculator up kind of year round. So it's good that you can download those and take a look at what that looks like, as well as they have videos up from growers in the past to see what other projects have looked like. Solicitation changes, CDFA has released that they are going to make some changes with the amount of funding that they have. There should be a lot of projects funded in the year to come, but they released that they're going to do a traditional style of how they've been doing the blocks, or of how they've been doing the grants, as well as the block grant style. And hopefully we're going to see this in the next couple months. I find out when you guys do, so I'm not going to know any more than you guys are, but that should be coming up sometime soon. And if I don't get to any questions today, feel free to email me. This is my email, but I guess now is my time to take on some questions.
Okay, yes, we actually have 5 minutes for questions. Michelle will read you the questions that have come in so far.
Yeah, so a lot of these questions I think you've already answered, but the first one is, who is eligible to apply and are there restrictions on income and ownership? This was asked at the beginning of your presentation, so I think it's about HSP.
HSP eligible to apply, like I said, California farmers and ranchers or anyone from a Native American tribe. There are not restrictions on income or ownership. Like I said, it's just a little agreement saying that the landowner is certifying that you can do these practices. No restrictions on income.
Thank you. And then another one, if you've received a Healthy Soils grant, can you apply again if you wish to implement a new and different practice?
Yes, you can apply again for Healthy Soils. It just has to be a new practice. So you can't have done it before. You can't apply on that same APN. It's just got to be new.
Thank you. And then where do farmers in Lake County go for Healthy Soils and sweep health?
You can reach out to me. I might be your closest. If I am not available, I can point you in the right direction. So go ahead and put me as your contact point.
Great. Is this different or complementary to EQIP funding from NRCS? I think this is also about HSP, but talk about both, please.
Could be about both. It is different, and I would say also complementary to EQIP funding. Like I said, they sometimes do fund a lot of the same things, but they can't. You can't double dip. So if you are funded by SWEEP or Healthy Soils for something, you can't also be funded by EQIP for it, but you can build a project with EQIP and Healthy Soils or SWEEP to create like a greater scheme project.
Wonderful. Do you need, so I think you answered this question also, but once again, do you need to have a pump efficiency test in order to apply to SWEEP?
Yes, you do need to have a pump efficiency test. Sometimes they do say there's ways around it with manufacturer guarantees, but I think typically it's easiest to have your pump efficiency test done.
Got it. What happens to the dollars for these programs if they're not used or allocated?
So what happens to the dollars for these programs if they are not used or allocated? So they do, sometimes they extend the funding programs, the application period, so all funds are awarded. I'm going to say if people drop out and if there are funds left over, I'm not sure. I can get that answered for you.
Thank you. And then the final question, are water treatment facilities to remove iron and magnesium for drip systems eligible for funding?
Manganese, sorry.
Manganese, I'm sorry.
That I am not sure of, and I have not had that question before, but I can definitely reach out to the SWEEP team myself and get back to you on that. Or if somebody would like to reach out to the SWEEP team, that's always an option too. But yeah, if you want to keep that one on there, I can get that one answered for sure.
That was from Anonymous. If you would like to reach out to Amanda, her email address is listed here to follow up with that question, aacharles@ucanr.edu. So thank you so much, Amanda, for your presentation.